Welcome, friends, to another wonderful podcast of Ed Hartman's Wild World of Music and Film. Today, I have the most genius man of our time, or simply another filmmaker. Alex Goldberg, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to meet up to that lofty expectation you set, but I am a filmmaker. That's true.
That's true. I've decided my intros are going to be all a branding that I'm going to try and top it each time. But we're up to genius. I don't know what comes next. Insanity, maybe. Who knows? Anyway, I appreciate the time, and what we're going to do is over the next few minutes, we're going to talk about Alex's career in film. He is not only a filmmaker, but he is an actor, and I'm sure you've done, at the very least, craft services.
I have, definitely.
There you go.
I'm a recovering actor. I'm no longer an actor, but
well,
but I was.
You're one here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I have I'm taking my cues from a couple places. There was a wonderful podcast I was invited to, Tom Cridland's, what is it, The Greatest Music of All Times. I have a nice little, he sent me a nice code for it. And he kind of, it was interesting, as I was expecting to talk about my projects, and he started to ask, well, what's your favorite type of music? And it was a really different type of interview. And so when I created this, I decided, well, rather than just kind of saying, well, what are you up to? You know, I would come up with kind of the 10 questions, or the other way to look at it is the actor studio guy, you know, as you come up to the pearly gates.
Yeah, Lipton, sure.
Yeah. So that was kind of the impetus to this. So, but we'll just start and we'll roll. And again, we can go to any number of places if you want to talk about literally anything. I'm not against it. This is free. Nobody's getting paid. So what the hell? I think I've made 20 cents so far on this podcast.
Nice. Excellent.
Really, yeah, some of my best licensing income ever. Okay, so hey, I'm making money on TikTok. I'm not,
nice.
I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah.
But I didn't think it could be done, and I make money on YouTube, which is even more bizarre. And it's not on my channel. There's a documentary, a really, you know, pollution kind of government documentary that's had almost 2 million views. So,
wow.
And
there you go.
A track, actually, the track at the end of this episode is this great track called Rivertrance, and that's the track they used, and it's been used in many cooking shows around the world too. It's when you listen to it at the end, think about it. It can work with any culture in the world. It's the ultimate eclectic world music track.
That's great. Maybe it'll your passive income will just explode from it. That'd be great.
Well, it's helping. It'll pay for the rat guy today.
There you go. Very good.
Yeah. All right. I didn't tell anybody about that, but anyway, a few rats floating around. It's no big deal. So Alex, first of all, I have to ask: are you related to Adam Goldberg of the Goldbergs? And that's the other Adam Goldberg, because I know there's actually two.
No one has ever asked me that. Goldberg is a very common name. We do have a connection, which is interesting. Yeah, I'm also not related to Whoopi Goldberg either, but that's not her real name. I do have a connection to Adam Goldberg, which hopefully I'll get to meet him someday and talk about. He has been writing since he was a kid. So have I, but he was better at it at the time. And when I was after college, I was living in DC and I was acting. I auditioned for one-act plays at the Little Theater of Alexandria in Virginia. And I was in a play of his that he wrote. He was 17 at the time.
Wow.
And it was a play. So I still have the T-shirt from that production. I'm not sure if he came. I believe he grew up in Philly. And so, it's 2 hours away. He may have come down for that production. I don't know. I have to ask him someday. Maybe I'll tweet at him. But I still have a T-shirt from the production. Yeah, he was great. It was a great, very funny play. It was it was a father and son, sort of estranged over various dinners, and I played each of the waiters. So they were at over the course of the play, they were at 5 different restaurants, and I played waiters at different
Wow.
restaurants. So yeah, so I don't remember much of the play beyond that, but it was a good experience. And I remember his name, of course, being my last name. And then
Yeah,
he took off
yeah.
about a decade later. I'm like, that's the dude. I was in his play.
Man, that's phenomenal. I love that show. That is one of my top favorites. It is so well done.
Mhm.
The acting and everything in it.
Sure, and right in my age wheelhouse. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
really,
I'm not related to Mary Hartman. Mary Hartman.
well,
Been told
well,
that one since the beginning of time.
that's a little more bizarre.
Yeah. But I do have my mother's cousin was Harv Bennett, who saved Star Trek, wrote
Oh,
wrote 2 through 4. So I do have my connections to the universe. So
that's very good.
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that we got that out of the way. I was concerned. So,
I have yet to
I
tell
thought
you're the
maybe
first one to tell that story.
I had inadvertently invited Adam Goldberg here by accident. No,
Yeah, and then they popped up, and you're like, "That's not him.
that would have been a bummer.
That's not. That's his office. This guy's office is not as good as Adam Goldberg's office."
Okay. So, where are you from, and where are you now? And this is not a therapeutic question.
Sure.
Literally.
Yeah, my physical journey, not my spiritual. So I'm born in Washington D.C. and I grew up in Northern Virginia. Was there all my childhood. Went to college at Skidmore College in upstate New York, about halfway between New York City and Canada. And then after college, I studied a lot of theater there. It was great theatrical and artistic community there. Then I moved back home to DC for about a year and a half to try to save some money, and then I moved to New York City. And I lived in New York City for well over a decade, and then to where I met my wife, who is an actress, and she and I moved to Los Angeles about 8 years ago. So we've been in the LA area for 8 years, and we live in Burbank. So that's where we are
Wow,
with our
man,
kids.
you've gotten a lot done in LA.
It's been a busy, good time. We
I
hopefully
mean,
keep it up.
quick. If you've
Yeah.
only been there that long, I was looking at your credits. Most of the stuff you've done is since then, right?
Yes
Or,
and no. I did a lot of theater in New York, so a lot of my
right.
theater credits are there. We brought a play to LA. We did sort of a trial period, a play called It Is Done, which was pretty successful in New York, and we took it to LA and staged it
Hmm.
here. And from that, it got optioned into a movie, and which never got made. And my wife, who was already acting professionally in New York for as long as I had known her, even longer, started getting auditions and bookings. So we were like, LA seems to be the way for us to go right now. So we moved out to LA, and it turned out to be
Man,
for us. But
I
yeah, the
yeah.
the movie we made together. She's the star of Closure. The movie we made together
Oh,
came out.
that's how is it? What's her name?
Katia Ojeda.
That's your wife.
That is
Wow.
my wife. Yes.
Oh, she's wonderful. God,
Thank you. I'll pass it on. She's
what
fantastic.
a
Yes.
great actress, man. That's not an easy role either. That was kind of
No,
complex.
there is only one actual scene, half scene that she's not in. And she's actually in the scene, but it's the
Yeah.
scene where she's talking to the cops, and the cops are on a stakeout in their car. And that's the only time. And so we recorded it, we shot it her in her apartment and then shot the cops in the car. So she didn't have to be there for that. So that was her only break from set
Wow.
was that. And we actually had someone else do the lines for the cops. It was the only time that she got a break.
And she got slapped by Dee Wallace.
She got Dee Wallace read the script. She and Dee Wallace were on a family show together called Just Add Magic. They were both series regulars on that show. And so we asked Dee if she would do it for us. And she read the scene, and she is like, oh, I get to slap Katya, I'm in. So she totally did it. And I staged the slap. So it was a very safe, we actually cut on the slap so you don't see it.
Yeah.
And we shot it 2 ways to make it work. And Dee said, and I'll never forget that, she's like, I think we need to try it for real. And she wanted to actually slap her. And we did one take, and we're like, it didn't look as real as we thought it would. And my
Wow.
wife felt it. Like, there's stage slaps that are safe, and it was safe, but it's still, you're getting slapped in the face. So the version that we have is actually 2 edits put together. So it looks like a continuous slap, but it's actually not.
Who did the clap? Somebody had to do the Foley on that.
It was 2 different ways. Yeah. So yeah, we did actually when we did the version from behind my wife, she did her own napping, and then when we did the close up, I don't remember how we did that, but yeah. So it was, and I don't believe we Foleyed it. I think we used the actual.
It shook me, so it did the job. I mean, I didn't even think about that actually. I mean, I thought, wow, She got slapped.
Yeah, good. Then we did movie magic. We did our job.
I think the funniest reference in there, there's a Glenn Close reference. And the first thing I thought of when I watched Dee Wallace is that looks like Glenn Close. She was like doing a Glenn Close impression. And then the role Glenn Close would have played.
Yeah, yeah. No, she was great. Dee was fantastic and very perfect for it. She loved the role. It was very intense. It was very generous for such a small budget movie.
E.T.'s mom, right?
E.T.'s mom.
Right.
Yeah. She's top billing in the movie E.T., starring Dee Wallace. Yeah.
Okay, so you're in Burbank. I luckily the film the As the Earth Turns thing, whatever. Yeah. I was in L.A. a lot for 2019 for a bunch of film festivals and stuff like that. And I hung out in Burbank quite a bit. So yeah, I was in your stomping grounds. Next time, we'll do lunch.
We will absolutely do lunch. We'll do it in person.
At one of the great Jewish delis.
Yes.
By there.
There's one. We used to live in West Hollywood when my wife was first pregnant, right by Greenblatt's, which was great. And like the cravings when she got to that point, we'd go down to the deli.
Well, I'm originally from Chicago, so
gyros,
corned beef, pizza, deep dish,
sure.
hot dogs. It goes on.
Yeah.
All the things that can kill you.
Yes, but it's a life.
If you're gonna go down, that's the way to do it.
Yes.
Okay, going back in time, how did you start off in film? And was there a musical side to you? I've been discovering more and more. Everybody seems to have a musician side, but I'm not. It's not a requirement. I'm just asking.
Yeah. So I started writing. I wrote my first play in 5th grade. I directed a short play in 2nd grade. I was big into, I don't know where I got the theater bug, but it hit me pretty early. And I did study music. I played piano and took lessons for a while, and then saxophone. So I played sax in high school band and high school marching band. And then I sort of dropped that to focus on theater and chorus in high school. So I had somewhat of a musical background. I can bang out a couple of songs still, but that's about it. So I know enough to be dangerous, to know what I want, that sort of thing. And I wrote a musical in New York, but that's jumping ahead. But so writing came first, then acting, then a little bit of music. And then when I was in high school, I was acting in all the plays. I loved doing theater. Went to college, didn't think I was going to do theater. I was like, it's not practical, and happened to pick a school with a fantastic theater program. So I kept it up all throughout. And then by the time I got out, I'm like, I'm going to go into it. I wanted to be a triple threat and write, act, and direct. And I've dropped the acting from it, but I still write and direct.
Well, Richard Lyford, who did As the Earth Turns, he had done theater in high school. Actually, he did theater when he was 7. But,
wow, yeah.
And he was a writer, director, actor, editor, developed his own film. And I'm working on the biopic. I may be looking for director. You may be the guy because you like the writer directing side. Who knows?
And let me know. And when I watched the trailer of that, and it really looked like, and I mean this in the best way, it looked like it could have been shot today. He had such a clarity of vision that like it could have been shot today with people in period costume. Like I had to check myself and be like, is that actual old footage or is that something? You know what I mean? I think it's a great thing. It felt
you're not alone. If you look on Amazon, there's a number of comments on Amazon Prime saying this is a put on, man. Somebody did this, and I'm thinking, if I could make a movie this clean, this good, this authentic, I'm Spielberg. Honest to God.
Yeah.
You can't be that authentic with digital. You just couldn't do it. So
that's fantastic.
But it's a nice digital restoration. So that's part of it.
Did they give you carte blanche with it to score it, or was it a?
Well, I own the film estate.
Oh, you did. Well, then you.
But there's a whole backstory on Stage 32 about it. Go to Ed Hartman Music. There's actually As the Earth Turns website. Read the backstory. But yeah, basically, I was hired to score it, and then I'm really good friends with the co-producer, who's the great niece of the director, who died in '85. Anyway, so yeah, I pretty much had whatever I wanted to do on it. So it was an ultimate project for me. So anyway, so that started a long time for you, and so your earliest when was your earliest film moment, or how did
So
that start?
I lived in DC after college for about a year and a half, and I worked at a production company that did. It was actually a giant PR firm. And, DC is a big politics town, in case you're
Yeah,
unfamiliar with it. And and there
I've heard
was a
about it.
yeah, you heard about it. So I worked for a big PR firm, and they had a whole wing that did video production, anything from live event staging to commercials to industrials, that sort of thing. And there were 4 directors, and I was the only intern. And so I was there for about 7 months. It was a paid internship. It was wonderful. And I left and went with one of them to be an associate producer at a different company. But they each of the 4 directors had their own skill, which was they're all good at many things. But like one was a fantastic visual artist. Another one was a great writer. Another one was amazing at working with the talent, whether they're professional or not, and getting a performance. And the other one was the one who made the room feel really good. So I got to watch and see all these
Wow.
skills. And then I left. I did acted in a couple short films there, and then I moved to New York and started working as a PA. So I did do the craft service sort of thing. And actually, on my birthday, which is April 22nd, was my first day on set. It was a movie called Ghost in the Machine, and it was the first day of shooting. I got to be on set, and I just remember how quiet it was. But coming from theater, how everyone is just talking in such a
Yeah.
low, controlled voice. It was David Strathairn and Bonnie Bedelia and Saul Rubinek and Caroline Feeney were the principal 4 actors in the whole movie.
Right.
Very good experience. And that was my first, and I'm like, I can't wait to do this. So I talked with the first assistant camera woman. Her name is Layla Kilborn, and I was like, I want to make a short. Do you want to DP it? And she said, absolutely. So started a collaboration with her. Did a couple of shorts. Directed a feature called Today Will Be Yesterday Tomorrow that a couple of friends of mine wrote and starred in, and they said, we'd love you to direct it. So I did that. That was a great experience. That also featured Billy D. Williams, which was a lot of fun. He joined us for a scene. Yeah. And so that's when I got the bug, and I was writing all the time. I was not enjoying acting as much as writing, and I would be fantasizing about writing while I was acting. So I'm like, this is a good sign for me to stop. At one point I was in a play in New York off Broadway. At the same time, I had a musical that I co-wrote going up like 20 blocks north, and I couldn't wait to get out of the theater that I was acting in to go watch the last 10 minutes of the musical that I'd written. I was like, this is a sign you're not giving the attention to acting, and you don't enjoy it as much. So also I wasn't as good as I believe I am as a writer. So I was like,
with the musical, did you write the book, or did you how the music come together?
I wrote the book and I co-wrote the lyrics. So the composer his name is Joel Stein, and he and I knew each other growing up, and we had coincidentally reconnected in New York. I hadn't seen him in a decade. We were on the same empty subway car, like just he and I on opposite ends. And I was like, I know that guy. And we lived in the same neighborhood, turns out. So we collaborated on a musical. It was a very good collaboration. We came up with the story idea first, and then we were sort of writing simultaneously. But it was a good collaboration. It was called Election Day, and it was about a president very much like a Bill Clinton running for re-election against a president very much like George Bush. So it was like those two sort of things. Yeah, so that was my first time any work of mine had been done on stage outside of sketch comedy.
Right.
And I wrote plays from there. So I written plays and kept writing movies and TV scripts and getting them staged.
So why? I guess the what was your initial inspiration for writing? What kind of got you going in the writing side of things?
I have always been a political news junkie. I was an American Studies major in college, so I love issues and politics and all that sort of stuff. But I really love telling stories about people who are affected by things. I want to see the situations that everyday people have to go through when they're dealt with something big, whether it's a big political thing or a big social thing or just, a smaller issue that affects everybody. So those were my inspirations came from, be the comedies or the dramas. It's how are people responding to this? I'm really character forward is how I would put it.
Right. Well, then, and closure is a situation that everybody faces with somebody in their family dying. So that's not that far off of your original process then.
Yeah, thanks. Closure came out of two things. There was the story side, which was how does someone solve a mystery when they're a fish out of water in a new place,
Yeah.
and they don't know anybody and nobody's willing to help them out because they're all self-centered in one way or another. And my wife and I had just been in LA, and we were, we had each other, thankfully, and we had some friends here and there, but and moving across the country or moving anywhere is unsettling, and there's going to be culture shock and there's going to be differences. And, fortunately, at the end of the day, we could look at each other and be like, that was crazy day. But I couldn't imagine doing it alone. So I wanted to write that story. And the other side of it is we had been in LA long enough to know enough people, and you reach a level of actors reach an early level of success where basically they're kind of bored. And what I mean is they make enough money to quit their day job, but the jobs aren't coming in. And if you could work, you spend all your time auditioning. Actors spend all their time auditioning when they're at a level of success, and the jobs are sporadic. And you could work 2 to 4 weeks a year and make your living. So we knew that there were actors out there, that some we knew, some we didn't, who were bored, who would want to be involved in a movie. So initially I started writing for friends that I knew. I'm like, I know this person, they'd be great in this role. So this is a movie that we can do ourselves. I guess the impetus for that was when my play It Is Done was optioned, and I was very excited for the option. And it was a company called Ambush Entertainment, which had done a lot of great films. And, the process of going through the contract, I realized that not only was it their movie, they could fire me at any time. And that's standard. They could do not like the direction I'm going with it and just let me go. Totally understandable. I talked with lawyers and they're like, that's a clause that you're not going to get rid of at your level of your career. So it's totally understandable. But I wanted to create a project that I knew that I could be a part of from beginning to end. Sure, I'm going to keep writing scripts that I'm going to try to sell or write for other people. But so those were the inspirations behind Closure. The real story of fish out of water, and then the practical, how are we going to make a movie? Can we make a movie that's just us?
Well, what I kind of impressed with is you've only been in LA for 8 years, which I guess is an eternity for many people. But I'm impressed of the LA references that permeate that film. I've been there enough to know them.
Sure, yeah. I love LA. I love living here. New York City is the greatest city in the world. LA is a different type of city, but LA has a lot of wonderful things. But I've been coming here since the 1980s. My dad is an attorney, and he worked for the government for a long time. That's why we were in DC. And then he worked for a congressman from Southern California, and then went into a private law firm. So by the time I was in high school, he was spending a good chunk of the month, every month, in Los Angeles. So we would go back and forth, and I got to experience LA as a high schooler, and then, in my early 20s. And then my younger brother moved to LA about 20 years ago. So I would always go see him. So I always had one foot in LA until we made the plunge. So I knew my wife actually had never been, and she had, grew up a theater person, even though she was doing a lot of TV and film in New York. And she's like, oh, LA, all the cliches, I've never been there. And we went there to see one of my plays, and it was January and 72 degrees. And she's like, I think I could move here. I think I could do that. So, and we did.
Yeah. No, it's tempting. I'm in Seattle, and it's cold and raining.
Sure. But different from East Coast cold and rainy.
Yes. We had our foot of snow. It's shut everything down as usual.
Sure.
But our power stayed on.
Yes.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Unlike other states.
Yeah. My wife is from Texas, so her family's there, and she's had, there were some stories. She had a friend who was alone with their kids, and nobody could help them out. The friend's wife was a doctor. So she was on call and stayed at the hospital. So he had wind up having to cut up and burn furniture in the house.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To stay warm.
Well, I wonder if Closure could be a limited series of her sticking around in LA and with her buddies.
Yes. He
decides, I don't want to go back to Kansas.
Yeah. Well, when she drives off, she takes the PCH and goes up. We don't know where she goes. We've joked that we would call it.
I think you got a series there.
Yeah. Closure to even closier.
Yeah. Openings.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, so we're moving down. So who were your filmmaker and or composer inspirations? and I'm especially interested in the ones that love to work together. But you could start with either filmmakers or composers or a mix or something like that.
I grew up, watching a lot of movies and TV, as a lot of us did, and I loved the early Woody Allen. I was getting into Scorsese. Um, the first time I saw a movie that I was like, "Ooh, that's different," and I would like to direct, was seeing Spike Lee's "Do the Right Thing" in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a beautiful, beautiful looking film. It's so rich in its color, and the sound is fantastic. I believe did his dad score it, or I mean, I'm not sure who scored it.
I don't
But
know. No.
I know his dad was a musician. I don't think his dad scored it, but like the jazz music in there was so rich. I didn't grow up a huge jazz fan. My dad was. My dad was a college DJ and had a jazz show and kept listening to jazz. So jazz became part of me without me seeking it out.
I'll get a little background here. Keep
Great.
going.
Yeah. So he, but watching that Spike Lee movie with the jazz score was great. But so that collaboration was really good. Then Scorsese, I kept enjoying, and then when I got a little older, P.T. Anderson, loved his movies, and various playwrights too that I enjoyed. So like I never really pieced the music and the movies together, except when they really worked. When they really jumped out at me. There's always a lot of great scores, but I wasn't following film composers with the same fervor as I was
Yeah.
following like the bands that I liked.
Right. Right. Are there any scores or films that you really like specifically for the music? I'm curious.
Yeah, Peter Gabriel's "Passion: The Last Temptation of Christ"
Wow.
was a fantastic score. That just the deep rhythmic Middle Eastern music. I would listen to it to study. I would listen to it to sleep. I really, and the movie's pretty good too. It's a long, long dive. It's a long movie, but that was the first time that I ever really was like, oh, this. To me, the score transcended the movie. I thought the score was better. Then you get into the Tarantino movies with his lovely pop culture and how he
Yeah.
managed to dig deep and find songs that you didn't particularly know that fit the mood perfectly. And like a lot of his actors, he wasn't precious and he didn't worry about if they were the exact fit or what.
Yeah.
It's like his music spanned decades for most, unless they were period movies. He would pull songs from all over the place, and they were always exciting and interesting. I think everyone burned, the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, but even
Right.
Reservoir Dogs was good too. And Natural Born Killers, I love that soundtrack. I think that was the first. Was that Trent Reznor who put it together? I think that was his first.
Could be.
But what's funny about that, and the music is all over the place. It's great, and Oliver Stone is very peripatetic as a filmmaker. But I read a book about the making of it, and apparently he wanted the whole movie to be scored by Bob Seger. He felt that was the way to go, and I'm like, no, that's not. I'm glad that there are people out there that are counseling you.
Yeah, that'd have been a
I
different.
believe that was Trent Reznor's first score.
Yeah, Resner and Atticus Ross, they did the Mank score,
Mm-hmm.
which is a trip for them because they're not known for big band jazz.
Sure, and I saw that, and I saw
I loved
Mank
it.
and Soul within a week, and he also did part
Yeah,
of the
right.
score on Soul.
That's
I'm like,
right.
that is, and what's important, which you can well attest, is it's not about,
No.
as Hitchcock once said, style is self-plagiarism, and what he means by that is, you have to put yourself into the mood of your story, regardless of your peccadillos and the things that you carry with you every time. How do you launch yourself in fully? Which came to Closure. Closure to me is a film noir. I love the film noirs, and they have their own styles, both with music, which is traditionally jazz because it came in out of the '40s, and you have a lot of darkness, and you have a lot of mystery, and you have a femme fatale, and you have all this sort of stuff. But Closure is a smaller genre that I've dubbed daytime noir, which is a little bit safer.
Yeah.
All the mystery is there, but it happens during the daytime, so it allows for a little more humor without sacrificing the gravity of the story. And examples are a lot of Coen brothers, like Big Lebowski is a daytime noir.
Right.
Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye is a daytime noir. They'll make you laugh, but the mystery and the stakes are always still there. So I knew I needed jazz for Closure.
Is a daytime noir? Is that a thing? or was that
I
just?
think I made it up. I
I'm
mean,
impressed. That's a wonderful term for that film. Because when you said film noir, I'm going. I didn't really think of your movie as that, but thinking about the jazz, you're right. There's aspects of it, and I love
yeah,
the daytime thing.
that's we
Yeah,
I mean, maybe I read it somewhere. I'm not gonna take full credit, but I'll
right.
trademark it.
That's a
I'll take credit if
wonderful
someone gives it to me.
concept. No, I
Thanks.
love that idea.
So we knew we wanted jazz,
Yeah.
and I would pick a little songs. I heard in I believe it was one of your other podcasts that a trap for directors is falling in love with a song that you're never going to get the rights to, and you're going to cut something. So I didn't do that too often. There were songs that I liked here and there, and my knowledge of jazz is a little limited. So I brought some songs to the table when we were editing. But by the time we started editing, we had a music coordinator already lined up, and a great guy named Zach Shelby Sizico, who is a jazz guy through and through. He loves it. He's a consultant. He works for Resonance Records and the Angel City Jazz Festival, which is one of the biggest jazz fests here in LA. And I came to him and I said, listen, we're a low budget movie. We're not going to be able to get rights to some classic jazz songs. It's just not going to happen. But do you know any more contemporary jazz artists that would be willing to, shall we say, accept a lower rate for their music? We're not looking to steal anything from anybody. We're want contracts out with everybody. And so he started bringing in some artists that made the final cut that were fantastic. Noah Preminger is a sax player, I believe, out of Boston. And we were able to license 3 of his songs, and it sort of became a theme for Hugo, played by Tom Choi. So whenever you see Hugo, it's Noah Preminger's jazz behind it. Brandy Younger is a fantastic jazz harpist, and she so for Yasmina, who's the roommate, who's a little bit more new agey,
Right.
a kind of new agey. She's sort of like a polyglot of new age. She so we have Brandy Younger backing her up. We were able to get Kat Edmondson to provide the opening number. And then the closing number was an acid jazz band named Belizbaha that I knew out of Vermont that were big in the 90s when acid jazz was bigger, and then broke up for like nearly 20 years when I contacted their manager and said, hey, can we license their music? And he's like, sure, of course. So I actually cut that last song to that in the room, and it was like, well, hopefully we'll get that we'll get the music to the scene.
Yeah. That was a great choice.
Thanks.
It was wonderful lyrics with that. Yeah, that matched the scene really well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt good about that. It is fun, but that's the fun for me is putting together the music. Shooting a movie is a lot of fun and a lot of stress and very tiring, but great. But the editing room is a little more genteel. You have better hours. But like you get to put it all together or witness the editor and put it all together. And then we brought in a composer, Jamie Christopherson, who was fantastic. We sat and talked, and he's like, oh, well, here's some themes that we can work out based on what you're telling me about the characters. So he designed stuff for Nina, and it score rounded out really, really well. Like I would love to, if this movie gets a big enough following, to put out a soundtrack. I think that it would be great.
No, it's got a good mix. You're right on
thanks.
that. Well, that's great. And again, I didn't really identify themes as much as other films, but you're right. You did make a great connection with the characters in there with that, and that's impressive that the composer, came in with those ideas so that you had some, a good tool to do that. Did you do a spotting session with the composer, go scene by scene with them, or more just let him ride with it for a while?
Yeah, we went through. He came and sat and watched it, and we'd already had some of the temporary tracks in there. So about half of by the time he came in, we'd already done a rough cut. Next time, obviously, I would bring in a composer earlier in the process, like before shooting, and so they can get a vibe. But at this point, I was naively thinking, because we're always watching our budget, like, what if we don't have a composer at all? What if we're able to place? So we put money into song acquisition and into our music coordinator, and but then we realized we're not going to get enough. It's not going to be enough. You need more. So we brought in a composer, and he really, and he did it. So he scored a lot on his own and played. He's got his own, like you do, a good keyboard setup, but also brought in, like that short film that I saw, like it brought in a trumpet player for
Yeah.
a couple of moments, which really landed nicely. And
That was
yeah,
an interesting film. It was done. There's a Seattle Film Festival, of course, didn't happen last year, but uh, for years they had a thing called Fly Film Fest as a sub festival, and they would work with local directors and then match them up with composers through an organization I was in. I did 3 of them,
that's
and
great.
that film by Ben Andrews, a great filmmaker and motivator out here. It's a wonderful film, and the fly in the ointment is they'll pick things out of hats, and you have to make that part of the film. This all has to be done in 2 weeks before the festival or whatever, a month. But we get to mix it at a nice studio and the whole bit. So my fly in the ointment was that they brought in a trumpeter in the area as part of that, and so I had to make use of the film had to make use of it, and so we thought about that anyway, and that's because I wouldn't have normally done that.
So
But
was the musician we saw on camera the musician you used, or the
yes,
two? Okay, so it
yeah,
wasn't an
that
actor.
same
Okay,
no, that was her.
great.
And I'm forgetting her name. She's a wonderful trumpet player in town. But she did come in and pretty much improvised those. I had laid down a bed, and then she played on top of that, and it worked really well, actually. Especially during the birthing scene, because the mom's going, and you hear this.
Yeah, I remember that very well. Yeah, and which is one of the joys of film and theater is the collaboration of different artists who can establish things on their own. You don't need film to write music. You don't need music to write film. But when you get to put it together, it's such. And stage plays are the same way. If you have music or it's a bunch of different artists in their own. Acting is the same thing. Acting is completely different from writing and directing. Some people can do it all, but yeah, everyone has their own instrument, and they bring it all together and create the orchestra.
It's a hell of a team. So, what are there any genres you particularly like or hate?
As a viewer, no. I will pretty much everything I will consume if it's well made and good. As a writer, I tend to go towards dark comedy, or in many cases comedy, and then I pull the rug out from under the audience, and something really messed up happens, and then it gets very dark. So
Yeah.
that's as is the case with my play. It is done. You feel you're going one way, and then something happens. There's a twist, and you're like, oh, everything that I thought was going on is wrong. Closure is more of a consistent dark comedy. But yeah, so dark comedy. There's always gonna be comedy in my work. I don't do any straight dramas yet. Never say never. But yeah, so dark comedy is probably where I land most.
Well, I found that uh, comedic actors often are the best dramatic actors. Inevitably, Robin Williams, people like that. They just because they're so authentic at what they do.
Yeah, it's easier. I don't know. It's there are different skills, but I think it's easier for comedic actors to do drama than the other way around.
Yeah.
One exception, one great. I mean, there are many great dramatic actors who can be very funny. Meryl Streep can do everything, but we knew her as a dramatic actor, and then you see her do comedy, and you're like, she's brilliant in this as well. She can all The Prom. She's very very funny, and there's many countless others. But yeah, so
Right.
that's harder, I think, going from drama. Just like it's harder for actors to go from film to theater than it is to go from theater to film. Not impossible, and many can make the transition, but
Yeah.
I think theater actors have an easier time going to film than the other way around.
Well, yeah, they're used to failing on stage, and it's live. That doesn't. Well, and as a musician, I performed for many, many years. I still do, but not as much. Nobody's performing right now.
Right.
But that helped a lot, and so I've developed and my improvisational chops from jazz especially allow me to improvise. When I first go through scores, often I'll improvise a piano through to kind of get a feel for it, and then orchestrate from there. And that can be a really efficient way to work, and that's really relying on my improvisational skills. So
that's great. Improv is key. I mean, I did a lot of improv comedy in New York. I trained. I did professional work as an improviser, and it's fantastic in its own as a craft. But as a writer, you never get writer's block. If you can improvise,
yeah,
I mean, you might write something terrible, but you're not gonna stare at a blank page. The characters will talk if you let them talk, and improv allows you to
Yeah.
just open up and let your skills take over subconsciously a little bit.
Well, I grew
Again, it
up.
doesn't create always great stuff, but
Yeah.
you don't perseverate. You do it.
I grew up in Chicago, and I would go to Second City and see Belushi at that time.
Mm,
People like that. I didn't know who he was. Kooky guys, but man, that was always impressive to see how fast they can move on that. And
yeah,
I was in improvisational music groups in high school even. So, it was just part of what I always did. Being a drummer or percussionist, you learn rhythm is the key, so it's easy to just kind of keep going. You're taught play a note, doesn't matter what it is.
hmm
For me, improvisation is not just, jazz. It can be, it's just, it's any style theoretically, if I'm good enough at it.
that's great.
Not. But anyway, okay. Are there any filmmaker composer collaborations in particular that you have really enjoyed?
P.T. Anderson has worked with, what's it, John Bryan? Is that his
I don't know.
go-to guy?
I'm not a.
They do some really great stuff. Uh, you know, Scorsese has worked with a lot of great composers. Through, I mean, I don't know which relationships have persevere. Hitchcock and
Herman.
or yes, they were great.
Bernard Herman.
Absolutely, that was a great one. Multiple, many movies.
Yeah. It doesn't happen that often that they stay together that long.
Yeah,
It can, but it's pretty rare. I think, and you go way farther back where you have all these Europeans come to the United States, especially around World War II, Roja and Max Steinberg, all this, those guys. Is it Steinberg? Yeah. They worked on so many. They were doing like 80 movies a year. They were
sure.
They were working for studios,
Yeah,
so inevitably they linked up with directors. Probably not necessarily by choice. They were
that's probably
assigned.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but going back then, Gershwin, George and I were Gershwin. I'm a big George
Yeah.
Gershwin fan, and I would like to make his biopic. He led a fantastic short life of
Yeah.
crazy, music, passionate music, and lots of whores, lots of prostitutes. It's that combination is going to make a great movie.
Right.
He
Really.
had needs that could not be met by mortals. You know, you like your biopic people flawed, and I believe that he had as many flaws as he had genius talent. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, he came out to Hollywood and made a lot of music, and then moving on into the '50s, and you have you know
Well,
Rogers and Hart and Hammerstein.
right. And being a theater person, you probably gravitate to a lot of musical collaborations over the years, for sure.
Yeah, you've got the Lopez's, who are part of Avenue Q, and they've gone on to do Frozen and like a lot of other great movies. They are composers who jump into the project fully and regardless of genre, and do it. Their music is always interesting. Lin-Manuel Miranda is great too. He's not as widespread. He's still doing his own projects mostly, but we're going to see, I'm sure, a lot more of him over the next coming decades,
Wow.
hopefully, where he's just doing a bunch of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, bringing us to the present. So, Closure is, I saw it on Amazon Prime, I believe. And when did it come out officially?
We did film festivals in 2018 and 2019, and so we came out November of 2019 was when we first came out. Although we just I'll announce it here. We're about to be in a lot of Spanish-speaking countries very soon. So actually, like our press release is going out next week for that. But I'll tell you and your audience. Yeah. So in Mexico, where actually my wife has some family there, which is great, and Spain, Venezuela, a lot of Central American countries as well. So we're out in 25 countries. But yes, we've been here and available in the States for a little over a year.
Now I assume you'll do a redubbed version for that, right?
We just did the subtitles. Yeah, we're not going to dub that. That would be
No.
great. There are a couple of actors in our movie that speak Spanish, and I would love that. And one of them, Marcelo Tubert, who plays Iskandar, does a lot of looping. So he does he's a professional actor and works a lot, but he also does like other movies and looping them into English or Spanish. So he would have no problem doing his own part and probably other characters.
Well, how many, you got into a number of festivals, but did that get cut short because of the timing, because of the pandemic?
No, we were ready. We were done. So
through.
we were very picky with our festivals. We did a lot of good mid-level festivals, and we wanted to go to good-sized festivals in fun places, because that's part of the joy pre-pandemic is take your movie out there, go meet people. So we premiered in DC, the DC Independent Film Fest, and so being from DC, that was really a wonderful time, and we won Best Feature there. We did a festival in Florida, the only one I couldn't go to because my wife was pregnant with our second child, and we were all, it was all like, I'm gonna go, the kid will be 2 weeks old. I was super excited to get like 2 days away from being up all night, but our kid was late, as kids tend to be, and so he was actually born during the weekend of that festival, so my producer went. And then we did the Marbella, Spain. We went to a festival in Spain, which was really lovely, and took home the Best Actress Award from that one. Then the Valley Film Festival, which is now, I believe, the third longest running film festival, or the second in Los Angeles. Took a Best Feature there. Austin Indie Fest was a few weeks later, and we took an Audience Choice Award there, and Best Script and Best Actress. And then we closed out at Manhattan Film Festival. I wanted to go back to New York, which was really a wonderful opportunity to go screen it in New York City. So Manhattan Film Festival, which is down in Union Square. And we took a Audience Choice Award there as well. And so we closed it out there. We've been looking at distribution all along. And at that point, we were like, let's put it out. Yeah. So, and now I miss the film festivals. I feel bad for all the filmmakers who've been releasing movies in the last year and going to festivals, but it's all virtual, and it's not the same. It's good that you're getting audiences for your movie, but and it's just going to watching the theater.
That's right. Yeah, you don't get that experience.
Yeah.
And as a filmmaker, you don't get the wonders of learning about DCPs and their tragedies.
Ooh. We've had some bad, we've had some issues.
DCP. Yeah. It just looks like a drive, right? Little jump drive from hell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, costs a lot of money, doesn't work, works maybe.
Yeah, because then you have the key. We had I won't name the festival, but one of the places, they didn't test the DCP until they were screening in 2 theaters, and so while one is running and the other, they had to break their screening, and they say, I'm out to a meal with my family who's in town. There's like 40 people at this meal, and I get a text like, hey, do you have another copy? I'm like, what are you talking about? So I went to the theater, and like, we're not getting it they couldn't unlock it. So the only copy that I brought, and this is on me, always bring a backup. I had a DVD of the movie, but it had Spanish subtitles burned in because it was our backup for Spain. So our audience in New York watched a DVD with Spanish subtitles on the screen.
A little exciting.
Yeah.
Well, half of them knew it anyway.
Yeah. I was so angry. Also, they couldn't get the sound to work off the DVD. And they're like, are you sure? I'm like, I tested it. So the movie was the screening was delayed 20 minutes because they couldn't get the sound to work on our backup. That was nuts.
I had a nightmare in New York, in LA, at a theatrical screening we did, and things did not work as planned. And I was calling up production studio at post houses on a Saturday morning.
Oh my God! Did you get it remedied, or was it?
I did. I worked it out, but it was tricky.
That adds years to your life. My first feature, Today Will Be Yesterday Tomorrow. We had one like theatrical screening. We booked a theater in New York. We also did a couple of festivals, but so we're doing this screening in a theater in New York, and it's sold out. And I'm talking to the projectionist, and it's digital, but I'm talking to him. I'm like, so what advice do you have, to make this the best experience? Because I'm nervous. He's like, for you, he's like, you're going to be nervous. And when you're nervous, the blood is rushing through your ears, and it's going to be quiet because you're just hearing your own heartbeat. So first-time directors always run up to the booth, and they're like, louder, go louder, go louder. And he's like, it's you. Most of the time it's you. Sometimes it's us, but most of the time it's you. Just breathe, have some popcorn, listen to
Well,
people laugh, you know.
as the Earth turns silent movie, so the entire score is the dialogue, right? And when we first started playing it in theaters, I was always like, turn it up, turn it up. I want to hear the music because I want like Star Wars John
Yeah,
Williams coming at me, and it's like, no, that's wimpy. And of course, everybody else is like, it's too loud.
exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's great to hear. And when we were at our film was somehow at the American Asian Latino Film Festival in New York. It was a wonderful little
Great.
festival, but it got us to New York.
That's great.
So I'm all for it. Okay. So do you have any I mean, you have well, your wife is a regular collaborator, at least up to this film. So maybe we'll see.
Yo, no, she's in it, and we're collaborating on writing some stuff too, which is
Yeah.
great. But I have a couple of projects that hopefully will get some traction this year. I wrote a follow-up script to Closure, which is not a sequel, but it would feature my wife as the lead again, and work with producer Bo Janot, who was one of the producers on Closure. So we would love to assemble some of the same team.
Yeah.
It's a movie called An Vino Veritas, and it's about a woman who um, messes up the schedule as she goes to her country house that she shares with her ex-husband and gets the weekend wrong, and he shows up with this new girlfriend, and it's his weekend, but they're stuck there together. So that's the premise of it, and yeah, we're
comfortable moment.
Yeah, well, good drama and comedy comes out of
Yeah, there wasn't in Closure. There was one scene I started to go, I don't know if I want to watch this, but there's always a moment in the movie where you kind of go, should I fast forward? Should I go to the bathroom break? It's like, I don't know if my stress can handle it. But your movie was not real heavy. I've just gotten kind of lightweight, I think, after getting shocked.
Yeah.
So many movies can really take it over the top these days. You never know what you're going to watch.
Yes, that's why you need warnings.
Yeah.
That's why you need to look at those.
Yeah.
Those warnings carefully. Yeah.
His head's going to get cut off. Yeah. Well, that's great. And so when you were doing musicals, so you obviously had a pretty good collaboration there.
Yeah, Joel Stein, who I'd known since high school, was great. Very generous in his collaboration. We wanted to make it a pop musical, and we both were heavily influenced by the Beatles, which is really the post '50s pop comes out of the Beatles, really. So it was great. We had a good time writing it. We had a great production company stage it in New York, and it was a fun experience. From that point on, I was like, it was my first play of any kind that had gone on stage, and so I needed to tone it down. That was so big that I had to my next play was like 6 characters, a couple small sets, and that's it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, Joel was a fine collaborator to work with.
Yeah. Do you see working with him again, I think, or?
I would never say never to anybody. Because I like continuing to work with people that I know, but then I get introduced to people that I don't know that come highly recommended. I didn't know Jamie Christopherson, who scored Closure, and he was fantastic. I would work with him again as well in a heartbeat. But again, I also see what situations come. I would love to be like those filmmakers that have a rich family of collaborators that they can call on,
Right.
they talk about Adam Sandler. Like once you're in the Adam Sandler world as an actor, he'll call you, he'll write parts for you, and he'll call you 10 years later and be like, you're going to come in and do this half-page scene. And everyone does it. They love working with him, regardless of how silly or stupid or highbrow his movies are.
Are there any actors you'd love to work with in the future? I'll make sure I call them after this. Just
there are a ton. I can't imagine. I haven't even allowed myself to have that list in my mind.
You got to have that list in your mind, sure.
Of super awesome actors that I would love to write for, and
yeah.
Well, I'll just pick some at random out of the many in the universe. Don Cheadle is a great actor. Meryl Streep would make anybody's words sing. I talked to her about her before. Christopher Walken would always be fun, I imagine. He
You
would
know,
be.
I saw Christopher Walken in the role of the mafioso guy in Close.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He
He'd have
totally.
worked there easily.
Yeah, he's
when I,
he's
when I
very.
first saw that guy going, that's either that guy or there's another actor who he reminded me of that. Oh God, I can't. Never mind. Anyway,
He'll
so
come to you like 2 days from now.
that's
You're gonna
right.
text me and yeah. Yeah, there's so many talented people out there that would be great. I was lucky that in closure that we got one thing that made that movie work is that all of our principal cast had experience as series regulars on TV shows. They'd all been on TV shows, and that meant that they were able to do a ton of memorize quickly. They could
Right.
memorize a lot of stuff quickly because we shot in 12 days of principal, basically. So, that meant we're shooting anywhere from 6 to 10 pages a day, which is a
Right.
ridiculous amount of script. But I didn't have to worry about them memorizing lines. The principal cast, they were all great. I also didn't have to worry about continuity. They knew inherently, all right, if I pick up this water glass at this point, I'm picking it up at this point every single time we do it. I'm not going to improvise once you start rolling like that. So our script supervisor was like, "This is the easiest job I've had in a long time."
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of TV.
You know, for the the character of Richard Lyford in the biopic I'm trying to create, Bill Hader came to mind.
Mm.
They both have this eye thing going. It's perfect.
Bill Hader's fantastic. He and that reminds me. So Kristen Wiig would be someone I would love to work with. She's great. They teamed up together a couple of times. Um, Yeah. Oh God. I
Yeah.
should have come up with a huge list of actors and read them all, and then maybe someone would be like, "Oh, you said me. I'll do your movie."
Well, I know of a composer in Seattle who's pretty good.
All right.
Who writes pretty fair music, and we're very fast, and he works on any budget.
That's great. I have his info.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to call him. I'd love it. Yeah, that's what's also that's part of the things that I love, and I wish I was working more. I wish I had more opportunities because that was another great thing. Was like even though it was a super low budget movie, everyone's being paid, and to walk around set and be like,
Yeah.
people are here working. We created something that they have a job, be it actors or, and yes, the PAs were woefully underpaid, but they were paid nonetheless. The only people that actually weren't paid at all was myself and my producer Bo. We were the only people, and Katie, our other producer, we were the only people who were not paid at all on the movie. Katie Rosen was our other lead producer, and yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll make money back someday, but it's a long journey.
Yeah, well, you're making, a penny an hour on Amazon Prime. So,
Yeah, it's about that. It's a little more than that, but it's
yeah,
weird. I can't even like I've been a student of how that works, and it's the
yeah.
variables
I'll
are how
figure it out.
often your movie. If your movie is watched more, you get paid more, which I
Now,
guess makes sense. But
what's your distributor?
indie rights,
It is Indie Rights. Okay.
indie rights, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And what we loved about indie rights was, which I'm sure you know because you're through them, is their transparency about how it all
Yes.
works.
Yeah, I can actually look up how much you're getting. You're giving.
You can totally. And if
That
you're
was a
getting paid
little
more,
surprising,
I'm gonna come back
frankly.
and ask for advice. Yeah, that's why. For those who don't know about indie rights, it's a community of the two people that run it, Linda
And
and
Michael. Yeah.
Michael, who coincidentally are my parents' names, so it's always odd to address them both. They believe in transparency in that we can all help each other.
Yeah.
There's a private Facebook page where someone's like, oh, does anyone like I recently posted like any filmmakers in South America that I can talk to about advice for marketing, and there was a guy who works out of Chile, lives in Chile, and he makes movies,
Right.
and so we chatted offline, and it was great.
Right.
But they also, the other thing they do is they issue a report of like, this is how much money that you made for the fourth quarter or last year or whatever,
Right.
but it's a document with everybody.
Everybody on
You
it.
get to see every film, and you're like, they made a lot of money, and other
I was
movies didn't make.
surprised. I go, wow.
Yeah.
There's some movies on here that are making good cash. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. There's some filmmakers that I want to ask
What are
marketing
they
questions
doing right?
about how how they.
Yeah.
But there's a time for everybody. But it's
Yeah.
great to know that because there's so many out there. You sell your movie to a distributor, and you not only don't see any money, but they don't have to tell you
That's
anything,
right.
and
Yeah.
they can tie it up. We were looking at distribution deals where they wanted the movie for 10, 11 years. One was 18 years. They wanted the movie for 18 years. Like, that's insane. That's a lot, because if they're not going to do anything, then your
That's right.
movie
You're
is stuck
screwed.
for
Yeah.
18 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
So
these are
they're,
exclusive agreements typically. So,
hmm
yeah. I had arranged Turner Classic Movies on my own, so I was able to exclude that, and I dealt with them.
that's great.
As the Earth is going to be on that this year.
Wonderful. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Very
So what is your goal for, say, the next 6 months to a year, besides getting a shot, which I already have one?
Oh, you did. Congratulations. Good for you. I'm would love to get one. I'm lower down on the list, so I will have to wait a little while. But hopefully by later spring, I can get one. So there's a couple of movie projects that and Vino Veritas is one. The other one is I optioned and am adapting a memoir called Robbie's Rule, which is about a kid who, at the age of 6, suffered physical, mental, and sexual abuse from 3 totally different people, and then became relegated to. It was dyslexic and it just went through the school system in the special ed. Nobody, they just kept failing him upwards, and then wound up going to college, getting multiple degrees in 3 years, has his own business, and has become an advocate for getting laws on the books to put sexual predators and convicted sexual offenders in a registry that was overlooked by the major registries. So so he's had quite a journey, and it's an honor to. And he's also a very, very funny guy. Rob Buswell. So it's going to be kind of a comedy about all these hard things, which is right in my wheelhouse.
Right.
So that's another film project. And then with my managers, I'm developing a bunch of TV scripts, some that I'm collaborating on with my wife, and some solo. And then hopefully this will, tide things over until I get back into theater. I love theater as well. LA is a great theater town, and I worked with a great theater company called the Antaeus Theater Company in Glendale, and in their playwrights lab, and I would love to do some more theater again. But theater is there's no carrot dangling right now. It's hard enough to get productions done, and if there's no productions going on, that carrot's not there.
Going to be fall for that, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in LA, they're starting the smaller theater companies are going to do a lot of outdoor theater.
Yeah,
they're getting permitting for their places to. I think the Fountain was the first to do it here, where they're turning their parking lot into an outdoor theater.
Well, that the tradition of the fall season that may get swapped right now. I mean, you think New York will be fall, but I wonder maybe they'll turn the tables on that too. There's really no reason. I mean, at this point, it's like movie seasons. They're going to be shot for a while.
Yeah.
When you put things out when it's available.
Yeah. And that's going to be the challenge for us for getting movies made. I was on a lower budget. Big budget TV and film right now are able to accommodate for the pandemic. There's a lot more testing. There's a lot of film is now all in zones, film and TV. So it used to be different departments are all working near simultaneously around each other, and now the camera people no longer see the costume people. They're never in the building at the same time. So it's easier on bigger budgets. Smaller budgets is going to be a challenge. So we'll see how we can do.
And we're talking 1,000 miles apart.
Yeah,
which wouldn't have happened without the pandemic. I would have never learned this.
Yeah.
No. So you got to embrace the situation and make use of it, take advantage, and thrive. So anyway, well, thank you very much for having a wonderful discussion, Alex.
Yeah, thanks for that is me. Thanks Alex. For you weren't going to go to Adam. I know. We'll bring it back.
Yeah, right.
Thanks for having me. This was great. I love music and film.
I'm learning every day more and more about this and the difficulties and challenges. I am absolutely in awe of any filmmaker that creates a film. And in fact, watching your movie, I was just so impressed by the professional production involved. Often when you're watching independents, you can kind of tell them apart. And it's not necessarily a technical issue, but there's stilted dialogue typically. The photography is a little bit unique, Mm-hmm. And you guys created something that really stands out as just, this is a good movie. You don't watch it as, oh, this is one of these weird little independent things that I watch on some crazy channel. you know, and it's very democratic now with Amazon and places like that. We can all compete with Star Wars, you know, if we want. But again, in spite of all that, well written, well acted, just well executed all the way around, and sound quality post, and you have a fairly sophisticated team with you guys. I mean, that there's. When I checked it, when I started looking at the credits, I go, well, yeah, that makes sense. These guys know what they're doing, and you've had this tremendous background with theater and everything else, so it all kind of checks out. That's why this is a good movie. Otherwise, it's too damn surprising. It's like, why is this good? You know, good people are making it. What do you expect?
Thank you. I knew my strengths are in writing and in directing actors. But everything else, I was more of a novice in. So we made sure, and Bo helped out with getting people in the room who knew. And I was up front. I'm like, you know more than I do about what you do, and I'm going to make sure that I exploit that.
Well, I think you also let the actors explore I'm guessing their characters quite a bit, because you somewhat put them to the parts. You cast them. That's kind of like a Saturday Night Live skit where they kind of look at those actors and go, that, you know, and sometimes the actors develop the characters themselves. But I think you exploited that well. Let them kind of run with it, because there's some really funny scenes where only in L.A., you know. So I was just, you know, looking for I was looking for the food choices, the avocado sandwich somewhere, you know.
The only actor I actually didn't know in advance. I didn't write for all of the actors, but the only one I didn't know in advance was Tom Choi, who played Hugo. He was the only one we actually auditioned.
Really?
And he was, I mean, he knew our producer Bo. They'd worked together, and so he brought him in. And we did like a very informal, like he sat with my wife and Red, and we're like, this is great. It's fine. So like that was the casting. We didn't have a casting director. Nothing against them, but we're like, that's where we can save a little bit of money. We can cast ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. And to everybody out there, keep listening. Tell your friends. This is my shot at becoming the next king of media. So whatever that is, king of this particular media. So awesome. I will be the Howard Stern of film composers. If that makes sense.
Better than the Rush Limbaugh.
Oh God. Well, all right. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
And we'll hopefully we'll meet again down the road. So Alex Goldberg, check out Closure, amongst others. I started looking at some of your other older shorts and stuff like that, and other films, and I didn't really get a chance to see them ahead of time, but I always love looking at the old stuff, because that's really where the meat is.
They're hard to find, but my other feature will hopefully be online this year.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank
we'll
you.
see you guys next week.